Hello. After becoming a Christian, I began wondering if it was okay to use violence to defend yourself and others. Reading the New Testament seemed to indicate that it was not okay, but almost every pastor that I have ever heard address the subject says that it is okay. So I have made a little balance. I'm going to put Bible verses that support pacifism on one side and Bible verses that don't support pacifism on the other side, and see what I get. Matthew 5:39. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. This verse is so clear, it really shouldn't need any explanation. But I think dispensationalists will say that the book of Matthew is only for the Jews living during the tribulation. How do you argue with that? I mean, do I need to go to a dispensationalist to find out which verses are for me? Can't I just read the Bible and figure that out for myself? The idea of asking a dispensationalist which verses are for me sounds like popery. I do agree that some of the commands in the Bible are not for us today. For example, 1 Samuel 15:3 says, Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. I think we can all agree that that command was not meant for us today. But when Jesus, God manifest in the flesh, speaks in the book of Matthew, I think at least some of it is meant for Christians today. In the book of Matthew, Jesus gives us the most profound spiritual teachings in history. Are you willing to ignore them? Think about the Sermon on the Mount and the parables and the Lord's Prayer. Would you ignore them because some dispensationalists say that's not for you? How many times have you heard pastors say, For where two or three are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them? That's Matthew 18:20. Do you think that was only meant for the Jews? How about Matthew 19:14, which says, But Jesus said, Suffer little children, and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Was he only referring to Jewish children? I'm not so sure that I trust people when they tell me certain parts of the New Testament are not for me. Didn't Satan do something similar in the Garden of Eden? I'm not saying dispensationalists are satanic or heretics. I'm just saying I would think very carefully before ignoring the words of Jesus. Matthew 12:29. Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house? I think this verse is a pretty good one for the non-pacifism side, because it indicates that common sense tells you that a man will defend his house and property. The problem is that the strong man in this parable is Satan, and the one entering the house and spoiling the goods is Jesus. You can read some commentaries on this verse to verify this by going to BibleHub.com, search for the verse. You will see several rows going across the top of the screen from which you can do different things. In the third row, click the word comment. You will be brought to a screen with several commentaries on the verse you searched for. So to use this verse to defend non-pacifism is taking it out of context. Matthew 24:43. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Like the previous verse, this one indicates that common sense tells you that a man will defend his house and property. However, keep in mind that common sense would not have you love your enemies. Following Jesus does not mean following common sense. Also, Jesus does not explicitly say here that it's okay to use violence to defend your house. The definition for suffer is to allow, to permit, not to forbid or hinder. You can verbally forbid a thief from entering your house or call the police. Most thieves would leave if you turned on the lights and told them to get out. Luke 6:27. But I say unto you which hear, love your enemies, do good to them which hate you, bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. And unto him that smiteth thee on the one cheek offer also the other, and him that taketh away thy cloak forbid not to take thy coat also. This one is just like Matthew 5:39, which we looked at already. Romans 12:14, bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not. Okay, this verse is in Romans, which even dispensationalists say is for the church. But what exactly does persecute mean? Does it mean someone is doing violence to you because you're a Christian, or just that someone is doing violence to you? Maybe you don't have to bless them if they are doing violence to you, unless they are doing it because you are a Christian. I'm not sure. But at the very least, it's clear that if someone is doing violence to you because you are a Christian, you are to bless them. And it's possible that it could mean you are to bless anyone who is doing violence to you for any reason. Mark 11:15, and they came to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple, and began to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves. Here's one for the non-pacifism side. The only problem is Jesus didn't actually hit anyone. Pacifists don't reject the idea of standing up for what's right. They just object to using violence against people. Luke 22:36. Then said he unto them, but now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. This is surely a favorite for the non-pacifism side. In fact, they reason since that times have changed and people don't use swords now, the verse means you should get a gun. There are three things I would like to point out about this verse. One, Jesus could be speaking allegorically, with the intent of telling the disciples that things are going to get really bad. Things are going to get so bad that you are likely going to die and won't need a garment. Two, after showing Jesus the two swords, Jesus says, it is enough. It's possible that Jesus was saying, let's stop talking about this, you're missing the point. Kind of like when someone is putting broccoli on your plate and you say, that's enough. In defense of this idea, I would refer to Exodus 9:28, where Pharaoh says, entreat the Lord, for it is enough, that there be no more mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer. Pharaoh is telling Moses he has had enough. Make it stop. Likewise, see 2 Samuel 24:16, 1 Kings 19:4, 1 Chronicles 21:15, and Proverbs 30:15. And the third point, the disciples say they have two swords, and Jesus says it is enough. So even if the previous argument is wrong, there were 11 disciples there, so apparently each one didn't have a sword, yet folks on the non-pacifism side tend to think they should all have guns. In fact, lots of guns, per person. Romans 12:17, recompense to no man evil for evil. Alright, back on the pacifism side and back in Romans, which everyone agrees is for the church. This verse seems very clear, indisputable. Romans 12:21, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Like the last verse, this one seems indisputable. Luke 22:49, when they which were about him saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? And one of them smote the servant of the high priest, and cut off his right ear. Oh boy, Peter used a sword to fight. Doesn't that mean it's okay for us to do the same? There are many things that God permits in the Bible that he doesn't approve of. Polygamy is an example. Also, notice that after asking Jesus if they should use the sword, they use it before getting an answer from Jesus. He never approved. John 18:11, then said Jesus unto Peter, put up thy sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Non-pacifists will say, see, Jesus told Peter to put the sword back in its place. He didn't tell him to get rid of the sword. The problem is that Peter's sword could have been a large fishing knife, like a machete, in which case Peter might need it for future non-violent use. Notice, Jesus did not say, "Put up your sword, so you can cut off other people's ears later on." 1 Corinthians 4:12, "And labor, working with our own hands. Being reviled, we bless. Being persecuted, we suffer it." On the pacifism side, it's possible that persecution here only refers to being treated violently because you're a Christian, but it's also possible that we are being told to suffer or allow any violence directed at us. 1 Peter 2:20, "For what glory is it if, when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if, when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God." Even if you are beaten for doing what's right, you should not resist. I think dispensationalists say this is not for the church, but I disagree. You will have to make your own decision about that. Acts 13:22, "And when he had removed him, he raised up unto them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony, and said, I have found David the son of Jesse, a man after mine own heart, which shall fulfill all my will." All right, David killed lots of people, and David is a man after God's own heart, so we can kill too. We need to figure out what made David a man after God's own heart before we start imitating everything David did. David was also a murderer and an adulterer. It's possible that David was a man after God's own heart because of his faith. He had enough faith to fight Goliath with nothing but a sling. 2 Corinthians 11:20, "For ye suffer, if a man bring you into bondage, if a man devour you, if a man take of you, if a man exalt himself, if a man smite you on the face. I speak as concerning reproach, as though we had been weak. Howbeit, whereinsoever any is bold, I speak foolishly, I am bold also." This verse indicates that Paul thinks that it was bad for the Corinthians to allow false teachers to hit them on the face and do nothing. But Paul does not suggest what action they should take. He certainly doesn't suggest hitting back. Perhaps nonviolent protest would be appropriate. 1 Thessalonians 5:15, "See that none render evil for evil unto any man, but ever follow that which is good, both among yourselves and to all men." This one goes on the pacifism side. Titus 1:7, "For a bishop must be blameless, as the steward of God, not self-willed, not soon angry, not given to wine, no striker, not given to filthy lucre." Another one for the pacifism side. Please note, the verse does not say no striker without good reason. It says no striker. Romans 12:18, "If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men." I can see where a non-pacifist might use this verse to defend himself or others with violence. But this verse does not condone violence in so many words. Let me share some commentary from Matthew Henry, a nonconformist minister who lived in England in the late 1600s and early 1700s. He writes, "Avenge not yourselves. This is a hard lesson to corrupt nature. Therefore a remedy against it is added. Give place unto wrath. When a man's passion is up, and the steam is strong, let it pass off, lest it be made to rage the more against us. The line of our duty is clearly marked out, and if our enemies are not melted by persevering kindness, we are not to seek vengeance. They will be consumed by the fiery wrath of that God to whom vengeance belongeth." The last verse suggests what is not easily understood by the world, that in all strife and contention, those that revenge are conquered, those that forgive are conquerors. Hebrews 11:34, "Quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens." This verse does praise Old Testament saints who used violence, but we are not under the Old Covenant. The Old Covenant has passed away. See Hebrews chapter 8. Jesus told us to love our enemies. 1 Peter 3:9, not rendering evil for evil, or railing for railing, but contrariwise blessing, knowing that ye are thereunto called, that ye should inherit a blessing. This is certainly a verse that supports pacifism. Let me share a couple of thoughts from some YouTube videos that really made me think. One is a documentary titled Prince of Peace, God of War. Another is a video titled The Greatest Error in History, Christianity Placing Violence Under the Patronage of Jesus. I'm not quoting exactly, these are just general ideas from these videos. Point number one, it would be ridiculous to say, if someone breaks into my house, I'm going to do what Jesus would do and get a gun and blow his head off. Anyone hearing such a statement would know that it just doesn't make sense, yet many Christians will proudly say they would do just that. It's strange that they would do something Jesus would not do, and they don't even think twice about it. Point number two, it would not make sense to say the Christians who participated in the Crusades may have pillaged and plundered, but they kept the faith. Again, this statement is absurd. A Christian does not pillage and plunder, period. Another point from Prince of Peace, God of War. Some people think it's okay to kill if you have tried everything else to solve the problem. Let's look at an example. If you think it's okay to kill when certain criteria are met, you might think it's okay to kill abortion doctors. This is hypothetical. It's not okay to kill abortion doctors. Look at the criteria. Number one, the victims are defenseless and innocent. Number two, all other attempts to save the babies have failed. Legislation, rallies, marches, witnessing in front of clinics, use of social media to expose the horror, nothing works. Over 3,000 babies are murdered every day in the United States. If there was ever a legitimate reason to use violence to defend the innocent, that would be it. So, are all these people who proudly say they will shoot an intruder really concerned with doing what's right, or are they just concerned with maintaining their worldly possessions? If they were really concerned about doing what's right, they would be standing up for the rights of the unborn. With enough support, we could pass legislation to make abortion illegal. Is it okay to stand by and let a person get hurt? I will admit that the idea of standing by and allowing somebody to get hurt when it's within your power to stop it goes against all of my instincts. But so does forgiving my enemies, turning the other cheek, allowing one man to pay for the sins of another man, and a virgin having a baby. But here are some things to consider in regard to pacifism. 1. God allows bad things to happen to people all the time. Do you know better than God? He is watching from heaven and has the power to stop anything at any time. In fact, the Bible teaches that He sustains all things. See Colossians 1:17. So the criminal is actually being kept alive by God while he's committing the crime. 2. You don't have to stand by. You can try to stop it without violence. You can call the police or put yourself between the victim and the assailant. I know it might sound weak, but the question is, what would Jesus want you to do? 3. What does resist not evil mean? Matthew 5:39. We know that Paul resisted evil to some degree when he did not allow himself to be handed over to the Jews in the book of Acts. And we know that Peter and John resisted evil to some degree when they refused to stop teaching in the name of Jesus in Acts. So some resistance seems to be acceptable, but we never see them using violence. Well, Peter did once, but we've already discussed that. If you kill an assailant during the act of committing the crime, there's a good chance you are sending him to hell with no chance of repentance. We are all sinners. What if God's patience had run out on us before we were born again? I know some people might respond with, God put me there to stop the crime. And I guess that's possible, but it's also possible that God put you there to see if you would be obedient to His command to love your enemies, or to your own heart, which is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. See Jeremiah 17:9. Have a good day.